And then over the.
All right. Let's go back in time for a second. Any thoughts on the intro through chapter 4 after we had a week to digest what we'd already read? Any thoughts on it? Anything else you guys want to cover? Getting into cues.
And today, somebody got this fallen, he's been walking.
Did anyone do the habit scorecard?
Thought about it.
Okay.
I did it.
Okay.
I kept finding all my good habits.
Yeah.
I'm in denial. No, that's not true.
Okay.
My sheet is a lot more good habits than, and apparently all my bad habits are only neutral as well. So
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Awareness, I think, is the issue, right?
Yeah.
Just being aware.
100%. So I went through mine as well. Same thing. I found one bad habit, but I also realized that one bad habit, probably from a time point of view, eats all of these habits up. So mine was in no particular. Well, here we go. Wake up with no snooze. That was a positive. Drink a glass of water. Positive. Take my vitamins and meds. That was a positive. Affirmations positive. Gratitude positive. Read daily affirmation. Read daily stoic. That was a positive. And then make coffee. Check phone. That was a neutral. Workout. Work on laptop. So there's all these things. I mean, when you start looking, and I'd say probably your morning is a good time to really start looking at what and how you start the day off. Any thoughts on that? Like you guys with your morning routine, what goes into it?
Oh, it's amazing when you actually put a clock to it, how much time is wasted for me.
Yeah.
Scrolling through my phone. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
With social media, I can lose an hour without blinking. I do it at night before I sleep, so now that's my bad habit. So I'm trying to eliminate that so I can wake up earlier.
Yeah.
Or, minimize that at least.
Yeah, like there's a couple things like, and again, this book is really good with just like now I start actually saying shit out loud to myself. Like I must be crazy. Like always, so I'm like hydrate before caffeinate, right? Like so that's one thing is to always get a glass of water in before, like in the morning, like almost as soon as you wake up. That's like a really good thing because you're really dehydrated from sleeping, and sometimes if you start with coffee as your first hydration, it just jacks up your caffeine levels and it just makes you, just it gets you on a like more caffeine, and I'm trying to limit a little bit of caffeine. Um, and then I'm tying all these things a little bit together. Like I've got to, before I can have any coffee, I have to finish that water. Um, is what I'm starting to hear the book talk to me about.
That is that.
Yeah. Yep. Um, and then putting it all out there, it's also like this is a little bit of like a perfect day, and I've got to start figuring out kind of sequential or perfect start to the day. How do I sequentially get some of this stuff in there? And I found that actually, as I do that, the negative, the social media, gets squeezed out and down. Um, so that's where I'm trying to definitely do this. Just go through a random morning. Um, and then see how you can start tying them all together. Okay. Anything else on that? You guys ready to dive into this week? All right, let's do it. We left off on chapter 4, so we are starting into chapter 5. Get there. Okay. Chapter 5, the best way to start a new habit. Turn this around. Okay. thoughts on this chapter? Any aha moments?
I like the idea of habit stacking. You know, whether it's a bad habit or a good habit you have, and trying to associate it with a new habit you're trying to program in yourself. Because I find for me, the challenge that I've been having with trying to start or embrace a new good habit is forgetting about the reminder. Because your body's not used to doing this new habit. Say you want to start a habit of reading a book every night. If you don't do it normally, you're not already conditioned to do it, forget about it. But if you find a way to stack it with a habit you normally do that you're not going to forget, it could remind you to do that new habit. Like you just said, you're not going to drink coffee until you finish a glass of water.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to drink a glass of water in the morning to wake up, but if you make it a habit that I'm not going to do it until after I drink the water, it helps you stay on track with that. So that was a huge aha moment for me on that.
So bottom of page 69. During the week, I will partake in at least 20 minutes of vigorous exercise on day, at time, in place. Is anyone using their phone? Do you guys ever set alarms for stuff?
Yeah.
Like on a regular and consistent basis? What kind of things do you guys set alarms for?
Well, I try to limit my social media. I'll say,
Okay.
okay, give yourself a half an hour,
Okay.
period.
Yep.
It doesn't work. But I tell myself,
Okay. And you set an alarm on your phone?
yes.
Cool. Okay. Anyone else do stuff with their alarms? Yeah.
Something very dumb sounding and very simple. But before I start my day, my alarm goes off to open my.
So your phone opens the planner when it goes
My
off.
phone says, open your planner,
Ah, okay.
because I forget. I forget to look at my plan for the day that I've already made.
Okay.
Or I forget to make my plan.
Cool.
So my phone says, open your planner at 9 AM.
Okay. I've got a couple alarms. So I've got one at 8:30 every morning. It's gotta go for a run. I'm struggling with that one a little bit. Here's the paradox is that it goes off on my phone, and sometimes I look at my phone and then I'm like, oh, what else is on my phone? And then it's like 20 minutes later of Instagram, and it's like I've hit the snooze button twice. So I'm trying to figure out, do I put it maybe on Alexa, where Alexa then gives me the go on a run, and it's not necessarily something that's like on my phone. So like there's a class I like to take every Monday morning, and you got to sign up for it like on the dot Sunday morning. So I've got an alarm at 8:30 Sunday morning to sign up for the class the next morning. That works really well, because that's very much a easy one task, get it done. It's sure it could lead to picking up the phone and being distracted.
You've got a deadline.
Yeah.
So, because you have a deadline, if I don't register for this class, I don't take the class.
Yeah.
Set a deadline.
Yeah.
along with that.
Yeah, and that gets into like, we make really good decisions for our future self. Our current self makes terrible decisions for ourselves typically, right? Because again, if you say like, okay, like you just sit down at your desk and you're like, what do I do right now? And you got 1,000 things you could potentially do, you tend to make a really terrible decision, as opposed to tomorrow at 10 AM, I will intention, right? Like I will work on that CMA that I needed to do. You usually, if you're a little more intentional and you have a little space to make it happen. Okay. In 69, they talked about the 3 different groups with the exercise plans, where they had the one group just got what was it? One group had a motivational talk, one group didn't, and then the other group had to make an implementation intention. I will work out at this time at this place. Groups 1 and 2, the motivational talk really didn't do much, right? And I think we all run into that. For anyone been to like you know, a speaker or whatnot, you're like, hell yeah, I'm gonna go run through a brick wall. And then like.
And I think part of a book club maybe or something like that.
Exactly. But yeah, it was really the intention, right? Like, show up at 11 o'clock on Wednesdays for book club. All right, other stuff you guys picked up in this chapter.
I'd like to, say something, Joe, so the, intentionality and purposefulness is a key here. But then the habit stacking that, Richard brought up, I think, in the context of what you said, sitting at my desk, for example, is that I think that's a really good tool for, matching habits. So for example, I was thinking about, I think it's one of the later chapters here about my locations where I do things. And so, I like to watch, the soccer highlights on YouTube on my computer, but I also do work on that very same computer, so I have a big computer. And I was thinking, I probably need to not do that anymore, like maybe, need to rethink that here, because I find that when I'm on YouTube, in case you haven't figured out, man, that goes all over the place. So,
Yeah.
So I watch a game and then there's the highlights of another game, and we switch over there. But what I was thinking about in terms of the habit stacking was, my desk is not the cleanest. It was like, okay, let's get rid of that pile before I watch the game. And I thought I don't have to plan out my life to do stuff like that. I can handle that in the moment. And I think that the habit stacking for me was something like that. Just make a couple of decisions, and then when I'm confronted with them, you just make the choice. Or I think there's a great example, drinking water before coffee. Like, I didn't even know that I'm hydrated in the morning until you just said that. And I thought, well, that makes perfect sense. So maybe I need to drink water before I drink coffee, because I like to drink coffee. It's one of the first things I do. I don't make the coffee, then I start doing, whatever reading I'm going to be doing. But like, that's an example of habit stacking: the water first, then the coffee. It doesn't impact my life. It changes nothing about my life. It's just a tiny, an atomic habit.
Yeah.
This you do. And I thought, this is where we can really build some significant, excuse me, I'm thinking for myself.
Yeah.
The book is kind of speaking to me. I can build some specific changes without, like, this whole purposeful vision plan, which is really a struggle to do stuff like that. But little bit by bit, you can start making some changes.
Yeah.
So I was encouraged about that. So that's what habit stacking is to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, the other thing to touch on too is, as far as habit stacking, is to make sure the cue is something that's gonna happen happens every day. It's just, like, we eat lunch every day, right? And use as an example, like, you're gonna do your push-ups, after you eat lunch. But they
Or
also
before he said before.
or because that way you're never gonna miss out. So it's gonna happen, right? And then I think it gives you like, when the sun rises or me a text message, these are things that are always gonna happen. If you attach your habit to that or stack it to that for a certain thing, then it's more likely it's gonna stick.
But on a smaller component. So for example, I think for Ninja Selling, one of the things they talked about there was specifically the phone and social media. Is that instead of that being the first thing in the morning, the author recommended do some of these things first. Don't take your phone out first thing. So that's a big decision to make, a big bit of planning. But with the habit stacking, at least, was like naturally living. It's like, okay, I want to jump right into eating. So maybe we say prayers beforehand. So we have some good habits.
Yeah.
But on a more interesting, some of the poor things. So using the YouTube is that I found myself like I come to work and I'm like, let me just see if there's a game on. I can watch some highlights. Got to change those types of habits. So you fall into, I was speaking specifically, fall into them fairly easily. And it's not like you spend the morning doing it, but that 10 or 15 minutes when you were really, should have been working instead of that. I can get to do that later if I want to do that. And so that would be something that I like, but it might be something else for others on the social media stuff. It could be the Facebooks, it could be, whatever. Yeah, but be more intentional about, being more intentional without in an easier way. In other words, just that small thing.
Well, and this jumps ahead into the craving part, and I think that's the step two, which is the like you love something, right? Like you love watching highlights.
Yeah.
You attach that to something that you should be that is good for you, right? That you need to be doing, and then it's if I do, you know, 5 gratitudes, then I get to watch like 20 minutes, and that's what they talked a lot about in that second part. That's where you start like tripping off the dopamine and the in those triggers. You just tie some of these things together. The you know should do, want to do things together that you get that reward.
Well, yes, he's explaining in detail what the habit stacking really is, so as you move through it, it's not like there's an idea, do it. He's opening up the science of it for the most part. I'm like, yeah, I can understand a whole lot better why. But for some people, they need that, but
And then like so when it comes back to cues, one of the things top of 70 was time and location, right? Always think about your cues and two factors, time, location, right? Like those are the things that become, and we talk about this a lot, like in goal setting, and then what is it? A goal is a dream with a deadline, right? And it probably should be a goal is a dream with a deadline and a location, right? Like where it happens. And it was interesting to think about that. I've got 2 chairs that I do a lot of work in the morning after I get all my other stuff done. And then I found myself going back like later in the afternoon and sitting down in that chair, and then I pull out my laptop and I'm like, what are you doing? Like it's just like if you're gonna take a break, take a break. And so now I'm starting to look at like changing chairs, which actually it's weird how that happened. Like, and I think if you're aware of these things, then you realize what's happening to you, where you do sometimes get sucked in, and we want to get off social media, sometimes move locations. Like Rob, if you don't want to do like give yourself social media, but don't do it in bed, right? Like those kind of things, like you segment out the locations too to hopefully break that pattern.
I'm pretty good during the day. I don't troll during the day. So at nighttime, it's my catch up. Like now I'm going through all the stuff I missed in the day. That's why I'm on it. I can go for an hour, usually night before I go to sleep. But I don't do it.
But are you doing it lying in bed?
Yeah, I'm doing it in bed. And I'm losing sleep. I don't need to lose an hour. I'm gonna cut it back to 30 minutes or 15 minutes. So,
And that's and I think that's like I run the same issue, and I think that's like because I'm in bed, it's gonna be like it's the beginning of an 8-hour journey into sleep, and it's like it just part of the journey as opposed to something separate. It ends, and then maybe it's reading, maybe it's straight to bed, right? Like kind of separating the two. All right, other stuff in chapter 5.
what's interesting about the Diderot effect, it makes you think about advertising
Yeah.
and how they play on that.
Oh yeah.
They try and get you to bundle your needs.
Yeah.
If you want this, then you might want this, then
Yeah.
it really makes you realize there's a lot of psychology behind sales that's not necessarily positive to the consumer.
Yeah. Top of 72, little requests are easy, right? Like they go into this so being specific about what you want and how you will achieve it helps you say no to things that derail progress, distract your attention, and pull you off course. We often say yes to little requests because we're not clear enough about what we need to be doing instead. When your dreams are big, it's easy to rationalize little exceptions all day long and never get around the specific things you need to do to succeed. Right? Like, and that is like
Huge.
Yeah, that's the big trap. All right. Just examples. You guys thought about any habit stacks or any formulas that you guys are thinking about using? Just to put this practically.
well, yes, I shared some a little bit earlier about my workspace at home, and some habits need to change there, but, you know, if I do this, I can do that. There might be some, they can become natural.
Mhm.
You know, try and make them just kind of part of your day. It's not a big deal, not a lot of planning, it's just do this, and, I think that'll be helpful. I'm gonna see how that works out. I'm a little aware that I've done some of that before, but you'll forget it's not less sustainable. I have noticed, and I would say something about it, at the top age of years ago, I knew, might have been one of the trainers at the time talking about, I return calls between, you know, 2 and 4 each day, and or on Wednesday, I return my calls between 1 and 3, and I thought, man, I'm like, wanting to schedule so tight that they can only do that. But, I noticed, and of course, now we live in a different world. You know, that was a time when the phones were, you might have a phone in your car, and
Yeah.
you did at the office, but now I found that, I have to turn my phone off. I'm working on it, like if I'm doing a CMA or something like that, and I'm really struggling, and I need to get focused. I mean, all it takes is the phone to ring, and I'm like, you know, like, doesn't matter if you answer the phone. It rings and boom, I'm gone. I gotta come back, and so make some little decisions like, this is hard. I need to spend some time on this now. I gotta concentrate here, and I need to turn the distractions off. So, that would be a type of, something you're putting in place. You see a weakness, and that you need to be. So, for example, for me, I got ADD, something terrible. So I can't have any distractions. Otherwise, I'll be like all over the place. So, but you realize these things about yourself, just do. And so, but I think there's a benefit. I mean, I remember I had my son before he went into the military, and as a teenager, he had the Snapchat, the Instagram, and I was sitting at the table with him. We were having a conversation, and I thought if his phone dings one more time, and I can throw it out. It's like I can't even have a conversation. Phone keeps dinging, and you know, a notification for something. Like I don't know how to. I found that very distracting. I think anybody would have been distracted. But I noticed with him, I was talking about. He said, "Well, yeah, I don't pay attention to that. Well, turn it off. You know, simply
Yeah.
need that for."
Right.
And anyway, that's a whole other subject. But we've to minimize our distractions in some shape or fashion. So, for example, with YouTube, like we don't have a TV to watch a game, so I have to watch the highlights. So I want to do that, but I'm not saying that's even a good habit to have. But I put some little tools in place so I can still do that. But if I do this as well, and I found that to be a little bit of success with that. So.
In talking about like, so you mentioned like, I've got to do a CMA, and I just ran into this, like, I had like, because I don't want to forget some stuff, like I've got like 20 tabs open, right, in my browser. And I'm like, I was doing a CMA, and then I was like, whoop, all right, hopped over to this thing, and I started clicking there, and then I was like, all of a sudden I was in a YouTube video, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, so I think sometimes it's, if you are going to start a task, start a new browser window, right?
I wouldn't have 20 browsers open. That would
Okay.
never work for me.
Yeah. So start a new browser window that is dedicated to just the task. And sometimes what happened, the reason why I went to YouTube is because I was thinking about some data I needed to tell the client about a video that I did. And that's where I got, like, but I would start a new tab specifically to find that video. You know, so that might be something too, almost like that place. Anyone else got other habit stacks or habit formulas you guys are thinking about?
I'm pretty bad at prospecting daily, and so one of my new habits is when I boot up my computer, I have a couple of systems I boot up, my emails and things like that. So now I'm booting up Bold Trail right away.
Okay.
CRM first thing in the morning. That way it's in my face. That way, there's always tasks to do. And I skip those sometimes 2 or 3 days out. So at least I right. I usually wake up, like I put out fires and whatnot. And when I get sidetracked, I don't even look at so
yeah.
I just want to have it. I boot up the computer, boot up Bold Trail. So prospect.
Yeah, Buffini addressed that pretty clearly. I think is that our part of our what we do for a living is we prospect, and he says if you don't do it, it doesn't get done, and get busy with like other things are taking our time.
Yeah.
So I think most of the trainers over the years have all said that. in some shape or fashion, but with it, I do have Buffini stuff that I work with, and I pull up his, you know, part of the club thing, and it has tasks it gives me to do. It's good, you know, I don't always feel like making the calls, but they're there, and it's easy, it doesn't tell me who to call, it says, it needs a coin, costs both of them. Excuse me, I'm not sure exactly what the metric is for tracking, but it just tells you to call it, you call it. Even has a message you can leave for someone. If you get an answer machine, leave this message this way. So the tools are there for us. Just need to implement them. I'm speaking for myself, to implement them better.
Well, and I think to Rob's point, I think that's the end of 79, first law of behavior change, make it obvious, right? Like, you can set up your browser, your default browser to pull up certain tabs when you launch your browser, you know, or you relaunch your browser. That would come up would be the, you know, first thing you see is the CRM, right? So again, making it obvious is the best way, because we all have the right intent, right? Like, you want to do better, right? You want to be a better business person, you want to be a better person in general. But we don't make those things that the tools obvious, right? Or we don't think to. So I think it's just more thinking about it.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. You can actually set your browser to open that automatically when you open the browser. You know, so probably a good idea.
One thing I'm gonna start doing is one thing, I wanna get better at my morning routine. We get earlier, first thing. So this kind of almost ties into the environment aspect, set yourself up. And one of the things we're gonna start doing is as of right now, I have a cell phone right next to my cell phone's my alarm, it's sitting next to the bed. It's so easy to just reach over, hit snooze, it's such close proximity to me. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have my phone across the room, where I have to get out of bed to turn it off. But right next to my phone, I'm gonna have my jogging shorts and shoes right next to it, so that it forces me to not go back to bed, but it's easier to just put my shoes on, my shorts, and just go outside and go for a run.
Yeah.
So that way, I think if I do that, it's gonna jumpstart my morning. So once I get exercise and the heart rate's going, then you get back to the house, it's still dark and everyone's still asleep. I have time to kill my office and get a lot of morning stuff done. So that's kind of one thing we'll start doing.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, chapter 6, motivation's overrated, environment often matters more.
This was really enlightening,
Yeah.
really enlightening.
Yeah, you don't go to the grocery store, you look at the grocery store different now, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the end caps, where stuff is,
Oh, it's very strategic.
yeah.
You knew they were devious, but
Yes.
boy,
Well, you know, it's like that with the candy in the checkout aisle. I mean, now, you know, they have the aisles without candy because people have kids. But the original intent, they knew that the kids are there, waiting in line for mom and dad to check out, they're staring at candy right there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how they do it.
But you're crazy.
What's that?
At Costco to buy eggs. I want a couch. They got the Love Sack reps there, you know, and it's cheaper than if you go to the showroom and buy it. And I actually had just measured my living room to see how big a couch would be. Like literally, went to Costco to buy eggs. And I bought a Love Sack set.
Yep.
It works.
Right. Yeah, because the eggs are not at the beginning, they're not at the checkout. They're not the right when you first walk in, right? What's there? Electronics, the love seat, right? The stuff that's more of a want than a need.
Again,
And caps, yeah. So again, the line in this, people often choose products not because of what they are, but because of where they are. Yes. Yeah. And again, this is that conscious versus non-conscious, right? like, kind of keep going back to this, where our non-conscious takes over, and it's just, this is easy, right? Going and finding the other product, that's healthier, better priced, things like that is, I gotta get my conscious mind re-engaged, non-conscious just took over. Yeah.
I can say I shop online at Giant and then I pull in and they put the groceries in my cart. I've saved a fortune because I'm not doing that impulse buying. You know, I'm in my own house and I'm scrolling
Yeah.
and I know what I bought before and I study the sales. When I go into the store, I buy a ridiculous amount of stuff that we don't need.
Yeah. So what are things, you guys can change in your environment?
Or but highlighted or have separation of a work area, you know, personally. I know that I don't have that problem anymore because I don't have young kids. But I know that was a huge problem if you're a mom and you've got kids to bring home, you know, get them situated with homework, prepare dinner, meanwhile calls are coming in and you just have this overlap of work and home life. You don't have separation, then it's gonna be hard as an environment.
Yeah.
One of the things that I did is I turned my phone off at dinner time. It's not, it's not like I put the phone in another room. It's just like, you have to create an environment where you can actually separate that personal space. And he gave the example of, okay, so you live in a flat in New York City and your room is, you know, 300 square feet. So you got a chair to do this and you got a chair to do that. You just separate.
Yeah.
So I always had this place, my dining room table where it's didn't eat dinner there. It's part of the dining room table. Even though that table is the same.
Right.
It was
Dining room
just the
table.
area, yeah, that area was not touched.
Okay. Cool. Other things you guys have in your environment? Or changes you guys can make here?
I decided I'm not gonna eat on the couch anymore. It's a terrible habit.
Yeah. Why?
It's mindless eating, so it's not healthy. It's messy. I dribble all over my clothes or on the floor or whatever. It's one of those habits that I never had when we had kids in the house, and now that they're out of the house, I don't have any accountability and, so anyway, I'll just sit in our uncomfortable kitchen chairs and I'll be there less time.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, I like the idea of putting fruit out,
Uh-huh.
moving the food around so the healthier stuff is more visual.
Yeah.
So that's a good idea.
One thing I can 100% relate to is an example of, you know, where they have a separate room for an office to work at home. I'm in that situation now. Like for my new home, I have a separate room designated as an office. Before, my office was in my bedroom, and I had the hardest time shutting off work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's countless days that I would literally be in there all day. I could stay in my bedroom working on the computer all day until my wife forces me out of it. That's how it is. But I figured now, you know, my office being a separate room, I'm gonna set strict times, and when I'm done, I'm gonna leave the room and close the door. That way it's out of sight, out of mind, and I could live my own life and create that separation. But the more I thought about it, you know, because the other thing too is this phone right here has become everything to me. And I have apps on here, like my Bold Trail app is on here. So basically, there's a lot of things I could do on my cell phone that I could do on my computer, which is a double-edged sword because if I'm supposed to move my family, you know, I can very quickly, easily go on my phone and actually do legitimate work on my phone. So I'm actually thinking about doing is to create more of a separation. I think it pops up more in another part of the book. Is I'm actually going to remove the apps and the tools from my phone that's gonna allow me to do that and have it only on my computer or tablet. So there's a separation. So this phone is strictly just for making, receiving phone calls. And I'm not gonna be, impulsed to do some work on my phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll still be able to work remotely because I'll go to my computer, but if it's in another room outside of mine, I'm not gonna be tempted to do it.
Other changes to your environments, you guys are thinking about.
Say it again.
Just changes to your environment, things
Right.
you guys are thinking about with the environment.
The whole thing about the stickers was hilarious. With at the bathroom with the stickers,
Yeah.
getting people to pee in it. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was funny.
What kind of think about what you said about as far as shelf, like, putting fruit where it's easily accessible in your kitchen, your house. To keep the unhealthy stuff tucked away in the pantry, but the healthy stuff in the front, right there, so that when you're walking by the island, there's an apple, you grab the apple, instead of a granola bar or a candy bar or something.
I know one thing I've done in the past, if I take my daytime, or I've actually had stickers that I'll put on the page when I go swimming. So when I open it up, as opposed to just a teeny little check. I have that visual
Yeah.
cue to, as a
I like that.
reward.
Yeah.
So,
All right, 7, secret of self-control. I thought this was fascinating. Right, they told it's the one where they told the story about the Vietnam vets.
So yeah, it's.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was pretty impressive, whoever would have thought, right?
Yeah.
It looked like with the drug like heroin, that would be so, that your environment would be so impactful on that, that's good. So that's pretty amazing.
Well, when they touched on how, a heroin addict, they go away to rehab, they're in a different environment, but they're not surrounded by cues or reminders to make them want to do it. But as soon as they get back to that environment where they're in the same area, they may not be craving it, but the reminder of seeing friends who use it, 90% of them go right back to being addicts.
I think that when I read that, my brother owns a heroin addict. He did it for 25 years before he died, but so and in administrate, we work in that environment as well, but I read that, that's like the most impactful thing I read in a while, because I wouldn't have thought that. Like, not really. So when you think of the Vietnam vets, I meet with a group of Vietnam vets on a Tuesday morning, and they don't talk much about their time, and none of them were heroin addicts or anything like that, but from the movies we see and some of the stuff that we know that went on, this is a real thing. And then to think that, from what I know about heroin and how addictive it is, not from using it, but from my family members, is that it's like probably one of the most impactful drugs, that and probably fentanyl, the crack stuff which came afterwards. But impactful and life changes. And then here we read in this book, like, when they left the environment of Vietnam, it was completely different. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. That can't be true based upon what I know about that. And that's what I mean by impactful. And if he's trying to teach us, for example, here, that your environment has an impact on your habits, if that example doesn't get your attention, to take a hard look at that, I don't know. If that works with heroin, man, there's got to be something there with that, and that's worthy of a hard look.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's like a lot of the really hardcore rehab programs, and it could be eating rehab, it could be drug rehab, it could be any kind of rehab. It is usually pull you out of your environment, put you in a brand new environment, right? Like that's one of the ones for programs that really stick, is they've got to pull you out of they've got to get you out of your routines that you're into that lead to obviously getting whatever the bad habit is, having it excessive.
but I think his point here is that, sorry, Joe,
Yeah.
I'm using my brother-in-law as an example, but at 4 rehabs, and the last one he was clean, but anyway, OD'd. But the 3 prior to that, over the course of a number of years. Clean for the longest time when he came out, then the environment back into that, so.
Yeah.
You know, raised where I was, where alcoholism was like a huge part of my culture when I was raised, and seeing how that, when I reflect a little bit, by putting this framework on top of, you know, how I was raised and looking at that, I was thinking that alcohol was such a huge part of the lifestyle. And so, I mean, functioning alcoholics is like the norm for the people I ran with, family, grandparents, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of accepted that's kind of the way it was. And I was kind of reflecting on the lifestyle. It wasn't like they were all running to the bars all the time or the pubs, which they were, but it was just part of life.
Yeah.
And that's how I was thinking about the environment component here for the
Yeah.
teaching year. There's something there, right?
I know.
Look at that there. I think there's something.
The one thing about this chapter, when it's making the impulse invisible, the cue invisible. And I can relate to this being a non-smoker. You know, I used to be a very heavy smoker. Smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Wow. And I tried to quit so many times in the past and was never successful at doing that. I realize now, in hindsight, that the reason why is because it was always there. I couldn't get away from it. But you know, when they passed that law, cigarette ban, you can't smoke in public or in restaurants anymore, in bars, they made it easy for me to quit. Because back then when I quit smoking, I was a very sociable drinker. I would go out to bars, I'd go out to gatherings and public places. And being in a bar and someone can't smoke around you, and if you want to smoke, you had to go outside. You know, it made it easy for me to just forget about it because one, why would I want to go outside and lose my bar stool? You know, I'd rather stay at the bar with my friends. But at the same token, I realized also I wasn't seeing it. And the less I saw it, the more it made it easier for me to quit.
Right.
Well, I think we also, this chapter where we mentioned that not only is sight, you know, our sense, so many senses, sight is the number one used for like 10 million, I guess, 10 million senses that
Yeah.
use sight.
Our sight sense.
We also forget, like, for companies like McDonald's, our attraction to salt, fat. You know, so there are people who are addicted to sugar. Those things are hard. Those addictions to the salt and fat, the food that's fat and processed foods, the sugar, all those are in our environment.
Yeah.
Purposefully.
Yeah.
And so if you know, I know your addiction is really difficult, but what about this addiction to all this processed food that's
Yeah.
and sugar?
Well, even like if you think about like if you like a potato, right? Like if you ate a potato, let's say you ate a raw potato, right? If you just boiled a potato, no salt on it, no flavoring, versus a potato that's got butter, salt on it, you probably eat like 100 of the baked potatoes, but like just a plain. So like some of the weight loss stuff is to just limit the stuff that makes it. It's really just nourishing.
Stuff that makes it good.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was raised, potatoes is what we ate. It's what came to differentiate them.
But once again, but that's the insidious part of the marketing.
Yeah.
They know exactly how to reel you in.
Yeah.
With the smell, with the visual. I mean, it's hilarious. You open up like a Women's Day or a women's magazine, you have weight loss advertisement, and on the next page, you have a recipe for chocolate cake with a beautiful picture. Like, I mean, it's very hard, very hard.
It's unfair.
I did like bottom of 93, bad habits are autocatalytic. The process feeds itself, right? You eat junk food, so you feel bad, so you eat more junk food. Watching television makes you feel sluggish, so you watch more television because you just don't feel like doing anything, right? You worry about your health makes you feel anxious, so you smoke to ease the anxiety. You know, that's and I think a lot of this is just self-awareness, like, and I've actually started saying stuff out loud to myself. You know, I picked up on the beginning part of the cues, like, would a healthy person do this? I literally started saying that shit before I start eating after 9 o'clock, right?
Yeah. You're playing the ice cream.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I remember that after my grandmother died, I was driving along, I'm like, I'm gonna go get a, a sugary latte, and I'm like, why bother? I'm not gonna feel any better. It's not, I just have to feel horrible. I mean, it's part of it is giving yourself permission to feel bad, feel whatever you feel.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it is.
So, Mark, to yours, here's the punchline 94. You can break a habit, but you're unlikely to forget it. And I think that's probably with addiction. That is the problem we have, because I've had people go through different types of rehab, and it's like they know better. They've invested money. They've seen how it hurts people, right? They've been sober enough, and they've seen what being sober versus not sober does, and then they do it again. And it's like, and it's hard.
But don't, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But I think what I added, or what for me was the environment going back into it, the associations. So when we remove that, like the heroin addicts or the whatever addiction you're trying to get rid of, you go to this place, they remove everything. So that's the principles, like let's remove the cues,
yeah,
which lead to the cravings. And so, but then they're done after whatever, a month or whatever, and they kick them back into the real world, thinking that their self-control would help them. Their common sense, logic, and self-control would win the day. But he's arguing, no, not, because I guess you don't forget, but the cues are back.
Yeah.
And then so this whole notion that I think what was he? It was somewhere in the book they said, self-control, we think that self-control will take care of everything, strong-willed people. And he's like, no, the disciplines in our life is what all that's about. We have some small disciplines, bigger disciplines. So that creates, I'm taking liberties, that creates self-control. That's my words, not his, but we have these disciplines or little things in place that all accumulate.
Like atomic habits.
1% incremental changes. Is that what you're saying, Joe?
We're right, because again, and I think that's not to oversimplify. So you're right on. It's those, because again, if you take someone out of the environment, you teach them why, how, what, get them some tools, but then you put them right back in the environment, and it's just the vacuum gets filled back up with, okay, like I'm feeling anxious. I normally go, take heroin, or I do, smoke or do this. If they don't have any tools or resources that interrupt that, it just goes straight back to where it is.
Why AA works, right? If you have somebody you can call on, who has been through this, understands, they want to have a drink, and you call, what do you call them? Sponsors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I was thinking too, Richard, with your wanting to work out in the morning, you have somebody who's going to do the same thing, that hold each other accountable. Call, 8:30 a.m. goes up, and call your buddy, say, hey, my alarm went off, did yours, something along those lines.
But for me, the biggest aha was removing cue, making it, just take it out. Because for me, like this book, which has become a big aha more for me, is, it goes both ways. The atomic habit, like it's the little things you do that automatically amount to something big, right? But it goes the other way too. It's like, let's say for example, if I quit smoking, right? Let's just go back in time. I quit smoking. I was great for 6 months, but then I see a cigarette sitting there. I'm like, you know what? One drag is not going to hurt me.
Right.
Once I can smoke one cigarette, it's not going to hurt me. But the problem is if it's still there, I'm going to do it again and again and again. Next thing you know, before I realize it, I'm back to being a smoker again. But if I eliminate it, if it's not there for me to even have access to it, it's not going to happen. So it's like, it's one thing to have like a physical addiction, it's hard to overcome a physical addiction because your body's craving it, right? You actually get ill. But if it's a habitual addiction, it's something you're accustomed to doing, you can reprogram that, but you just have to make sure you eliminate it so you don't see it. So I mean, the biggest thing was, I think you said also, like previous chapter was, don't focus on eliminating the problem, focus on eliminating the cue that makes you want the problem or makes you. That's a good point.
Avoid the trigger.
Exactly, with the trigger.
And in here it says that it's easier to avoid temptation. So just rather than resist it, just avoid it. And the other thing I was thinking when I was listening to you guys is, well, in the book, it says about, you were saying you can't break the habit. Well, you can break it, but you're unlikely to forget it. I was thinking about children. And when you go to therapy, which I did once, but anyway, the very first, they're like, tell me about your childhood. And it seems to me that that always comes back to what's your childhood? And then you build everything from that. So again, with the breaking habits versus forgetting them. That's all.
Thank you, Marge.
Well, I wish I was there.
Well, you are.
Okay, good.
Yeah. All right, so second law, make it attractive.
Now that's a good one.
Yeah, now now we're getting into craving. Chapter 8, how to make a habit irresistible.
This is very interesting.
I do love kale though. I don't know why they're ripping on kale.
Are you serious?
I love kale. I think it actually has a great, like, I mean, it's just so crunchy, like.
Do you massage your kale?
I do.
Okay, that
Yeah.
makes a big difference. Once I learned I had to massage it, it changed the whole thing.
Gel sriracha is really good.
Uh-huh. Yeah, right. It's all the stuff you put on it.
In late October, November, if you come up and visit me,
Okay.
everything's gone except the kale is still in the garden. Oh,
I'll
yeah,
come
cool.
over, take care of that for
I
you.
don't think we starving to eat that stuff. I'm sorry, I just can't.
Totally off topic. What was, they had like some meme about like one of the largest consumers of kale was Pizza Hut for their buffets, because they had their, you know, they garnished their buffet with all this kale. They were one of the biggest consumers of kale. No one ever friggin' ate a bite of it.
Decoration. Right. That's interesting.
Why would
Okay.
you eat kale when you have? Wow.
So remember,
French fries?
law 1 was make,
Pepperoni.
Oh, yes, yeah.
law 1 was make it obvious. Law 2, we're getting into make it attractive, right? And we've got these, like, anyone ever delve into some psychology, they talk about, like, we got a little lizard brain, a caveman brain. We if you think about it, it's not long ago, if you look at our evolutionary process, we were literally running from, we're low on the food chain. Like we were hunted, right? It wasn't until we figured out fire, in all honesty, that we were able to cook our food, which made you spend a lot of calories digesting raw food. Cooked food takes less calories to digest, so our brains grew bigger because we didn't have to spend as much calories on food digestion. Fire was like the biggest gift we've ever been given, and it just changed where we went on the pecking order, right? But we still have this lizard brain, this little cave person in us that is like, it's got some desires, it's got fears that are completely irrational in today's day and age, but we're still wired that way. And kind of what's attractive to us, that's where, you know, kind of the companies do a really good job just pouncing all over those nerves. So talk about dopamine spike.
What I found very interesting, that was the biggest aha moment in this chapter for me was, you know, it's the anticipation that we're attracted to, not the fulfillment. And the point they made, which I can totally relate to, is, you know, the anticipation of Christmas and opening presents is more fulfilling than actually opening a present. I get done on vacation.
Yeah.
It's the counting down the days before you go to the beach that's most exciting for me. And when you're on the middle of vacation, you're not thinking about vacation, you're thinking about, oh God, gotta go back home soon, and you get depressed. So it's like.
Yeah.
So that, I guess, just the whole idea of how to understand the psychology behind it, that, you know, it's the anticipation that really is what we're after.
And once again, how advertisers can take that and twist it around and manipulate us.
Yeah. What ABC, when they did a Thursday night, they talked about a Thursday night lineup. How they paired it with popcorn and wine and.
So it says in here, your brain far more your brain has far more neural circuitry allocated for wanting rewards than liking them. Bottom of or middle of 108 says there's a strategy known as temptation bundling that comes into play. And then that's the habit stacking plus temptation bundling formula. This is 110. After I current habit, I will habit I need. After I habit I need, I will habit I want. How do you guys think that plays out? What's something we could do that spitball that? What do y'all think?
I like that idea, like, tonight, you know, I like the NBA, watching the NBA finals, the game's on tonight. I come home, my wife's up complaining, like, everything's so messy, you don't help me clean up. So before I sit down to the game, they like clean up that area, house, without the kids always laying around, so clean up before you sit down and watch the game.
Okay.
I like that.
But you still have to use discipline. Like if you wanna tear up, clean up before you watch the game, you still gotta have the discipline to actually do it too. That's what I find going.
We do it every time, I'm just using the game example, but instead of watching whatever favorite TV show you got, or you sit down and watch, what are you gonna watch? Clean up.
Okay.
Something.
Yep.
I have that habit, my wife does a lot of cleaning the house. I think I can pitch in more.
So that can be like, so I'm just gonna, so after I eat dinner, I will clean up the family room. After I clean up the family room, then I get to sit down and watch the game, right? Like, I'm oversimplifying this, but that's kind of the, right? Like, current habit trigger to something you need to do, cleaning. The cleaning leads to being able to sit down and enjoy it.
It's gotta be a reward.
They've got the examples they've got, and I'll give you guys, I sent out the resource stuff last week. I'll resend out that email, but they've got ones that are more business specific too.
You might set a timer. I mean, I did this with my kids, I do it with myself. My mom used to say a 5-minute clutter cleanup. So if I'm really tired, I'll look at the kitchen, I'll literally go to the microwave, set it for 10 minutes. I'm only gonna clean in the kitchen for 10 minutes, knowing that when the 10 minutes goes off and there's still more to do, I'm gonna be motivated to do the rest.
Yep.
Cause I'm almost done anyway. But anyway,
Well, what are you gonna do after the cleanup?
probably sit and watch a meaningless, stupid show that sucks the creativity out of my body and.
Tell us how you really feel about that, if you don't mind.
Well, again, what they talked about was like,
Watch a Hallmark where I already know the ending.
yeah.
Well, Joe, hang on a sec. So,
Yeah.
I appreciate what you just did there, by the way, in just tying the wants to that. But I wonder what you just said about the microwave and get things done. It's like there's an accomplishment takes place. Can that just be okay? I think
Yeah.
it's okay for that to just be okay. So if we look at these series of things that will be taught here by Mr. Clear about creating these not lists, but, you know, series of things to take place, then the better we get at this, the longer the series will be. Like, I'm gonna do this before I do that, and when I do that, that will lead to this, and because I wanna do that. So I wonder, is it, I think it was like a training. Like, I can get warmed up first with some new habits, and then now, what am I gonna build these habits into? But I think it's okay to just, so,
Honestly, the reward is a clean kitchen. And waking up in the morning and walking out and being like, oh, my kitchen looks great.
now, I'm not suggesting for a sec we need to be satisfied with, say, not accomplishing, but for example, I'm not speaking about you, Christopher, I know nothing about you, but just say for the person that can't get their place cleaned up and then all of a sudden spend 10 minutes cleaning up, that has to be okay. Like, we need to be, that's a victory as I see it.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, and I think with all of this, just like there's some people who, like, a cigarette creates a craving that for someone else would never ever. It's like, that's friggin' gross. Why would you ever? I think that's where I think we're all on different levels of what's important to us and what we need to give ourselves a little bit of kind of grace on, and for the rest of us, sometimes it's things we do need to. Because I think it is important. I think there are, and I think as at the end of this chapter, this rule 2, I'm now turned on to looking at, okay, are there things that like I want to do that aren't necessarily good for me? What can I put ahead of this that like is good, right? That helps me. Then my reward is something bad that I'm gonna do anyways, right? At least let's tie it to something that's good, and then maybe I have some good stuff always that exceeds the bad, and maybe the good stuff then starts squeezing the bad ones out a little bit more.
Creating systems.
Yeah.
And we've heard this taught in different arenas, different focuses, but
But a lot of times we were taught like the social media, like we'll dig into social media, right? Like, so it's bad, just stop doing it, right? Like, so I'm just gonna stop doing it, right? Like, and then you're like, you don't, and I think that's, I'm making this, maybe I'm tying too much to this, but like going back to that addiction stuff, if you don't have something that kind of interjects, replaces some of the time, right? Like, then it's just social media, then you just fall into this pit of like, okay, like I'm a complete slug. I spend an hour on social media. Like, what do I do now? And you just back in this little loop that you just don't have tools to kind of climb out of. Other stuff you guys think about this, what are the things like with the habit stacking and temptation formula you can have? Anything else? Okay. 9, the role of family and friends in shaping your habits. I was waiting for the chess players to like revolt and like wind up like killing their parents or something, and it didn't happen. And I was like, come on, this is a little too hokey. We talked about the close, the many, the powerful, right? And I know as you all are reading this, you have 100 examples of.
oh, we don't believe we fall into those categories, but we know someone who does.
Yeah, right.
I think to Richard's point about in the bar smoking was a good example here of where that falls in. So
100%.
they stop smoking
Yeah.
in the restaurants.
All right. Anything aha moments with those?
Well, the many, I've seen, the term I've seen those social experiments where, like, I forget what show it was. There was a show where they did a social experiment. The perfect example of the many, that is, they actually had, they had the subject, they had actors, and they're asking questions, like basic questions, and the subject would give a legitimate answer that was correct answer, but like when in a group of like say 10 people and they're all giving a deliberate wrong answer, you felt the need to conform to the many or to the normal. And it's actually shocking how, I forget the actual statistic, but it was a shocking number, how many subject people actually conform to the rest. Even though the answer was wrong, they knew it was wrong, they still wouldn't live with everyone else's answers. And that's so true.
Well, I think this goes back to the whole idea of environment. If you're someone who's trying to lose weight and your family is not supporting you, it's impossible. Whereas if you're in a situation where there's a lot of support and people are on board, and then you can accomplish it.
Yeah.
But to me, that's what this says, talking about AA. Like if you have a network where people are supporting what you're trying to accomplish, you're gonna be much more likely to succeed.
Yeah.
Friends and family make a huge difference. The same thing about trying to save money. If you have a family that says you're being a cheapskate, you know, it's hard to not spend money.
Yeah. Yeah. What does Brian Buffini says, like, you know, show me your 5 closest friends and I'll tell you who you are, I think, you know? We're the byproduct of who we hang out with. And that also leads us, you know, sometimes we may have to change those associations if we do want to achieve different things.
Right.
Joe, when I read this chapter, I mean, I don't wanna start anything now, right? I just thought, I couldn't help but think back to, you know, go back 3-4 years, you know, the woke environment, and it could be before that, that's fine, but some of the strangest things were being promoted in our world that I just thought, what? And I thought about this when I read about that. Many of us, and I'm happy to talk about these, I'm not sure this is time for it, but we need to be clear in our thinking. So anyway, I thought about it.
Yeah, and
I'm dancing, brother.
I know. I think we have and I think especially for us who are in a service business, we have a desire to be open-minded, we have a desire to understand, right? Because I think that was like what we learned in Never Split the Difference, is there are issues that, you know, there are things out there that you just haven't maybe been exposed to, and it's like, it's good to understand what else is out there. But there's also times when I think for your own self-preservation, you sometimes need to be in an environment that sometimes is a little, you know, it's cloistered, but you know, if you do need help or you want to lose weight, right? Like hanging out with people who are, you know, healthy
Sure,
is
gets
a good.
victories.
Yeah.
I think we read something about if you want to be a better runner, go and have lunch with a triathlete. And it was like, hang on a second. See what they eat, see what they talk about. It's like the best of it. But we don't do that. We have lunch with the people we're comfortable with them. But I think it was a good point there. So in terms of imitating the powerful, how about identifying who they might be, and assuming it's healthy, we want to be a little bit more like, we want to develop some better habits. Who do we have close? Who do we have close that's a bad influence? I mean, you can kind of, I mean, he may open this up later in the book or something, I have no idea, but we need to be discerning. That discerning is a safe word. We need to be doing a lot better than with people we're hanging out with, or doing a better job hanging out with, I don't want to say healthier people, because that could mean whatever. Like if you want to be a top realtor, don't hang out with the rookies unless you're mentoring them, like hang out with the top realtors. So just make it relevant.
Yeah, unless you're gonna mentor. I mean, I was talking to somebody in our church just finished a PhD, he's gonna be a professor. And his wife was saying, I'd like to mentor, but I don't know if I have the gifts, or I was like, you don't need to do anything, hang out with them. Let them watch you interact with your young children, that'll make an impact. Sure. Without saying a word, right? Because some people don't have that. Some people don't know what a home looks like, or some people don't know what a mother looks like, and just by being there, you're gonna impact them.
Yeah, I always joke in my house, like, so like I'm trying to get into yoga. So I'm always like, whenever I go to the yoga studio, like everyone there's skinny, they're healthy, there's a lot of older people who are flexible. I'm like, that's who I want to be, right? So maybe I should I'm like the fattest guy in the class, so I'm always like, okay, this is probably a good thing, right? Like, all right, 10.
He encouraged you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, when I'm doing it, I think I look really good. And then my kid videotaped me one time. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Is that what I look like? Okay, 10. How to fix and how to find and fix causes of your bad habits. This talks a lot about our smoking friends over here.
I find it interesting about how they identify where the craving actually comes from. It actually identifies the actual underlying issue. I think it actually ties into social media where it talks about the reason why people have addiction on social media, easily addicted to it, because the underlying need to want to connect and bond with others. Or win social acceptance and approval. Like that's like an underlying, like natural, it's a natural craving that we all have to use. And that's just our way of achieving that naturally.
Once you associate a solution with a problem you need to solve, you keep coming back to it. Right? Good and bad.
He says here, page 126, we need to systematically reframe each cue associated with smoking and gives it a new meaning as an example. Imagine if you just read that to somebody without reading the previous, 8 chapters. It makes sense. You read stuff prior to this and you saw the baby steps to get there. But to just say to systematically reframe something, it's like, what are you even talking about? How do you do something like that? Well, habit stacking and then tying it to the feeding thing. Like it's all there, but
And again, I think getting back to conscious versus unconscious, I think our unconscious mind is looking for the easy, right? We can only handle one problem at a time. So whatever your subconscious, unconscious can do to manage the rest of the thing, it's going to be like, what's easiest? What do I know? What's the path of least resistance? And that's why I think we fall into those. Because, and again, a lot of this is self-awareness. We fall back into the bad habits just because your brain, your body's fighting against you in a sense for what is known. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. They talk about like, when the temperature's falling, at what point do you grab the sweater, right? Like,
How to reprogram our brain to enjoy hard habits. Like just change your way of thinking, instead of saying, oh, I have to get early to go for a run today. Instead say, I get to get up and have a fresh start or something. Like just put a positive twist to it. How you look at it.
that's just too easy.
Yeah. It is.
Anyone do the have to versus get to? Try to?
I mean, I do think that when I exercise, if you've ever been ill for a sustained amount of, you can, when you run in the
Yes.
morning, say, I'm gonna do this for Krista because she can't run anymore because she has a fake hip. Seriously, I mean, you think about people who have gone through cancer, and like this is a privilege to be able to move.
Yeah.
And actually, I mean, Atomic Habits, I was thinking, sometimes our life gets totally whacked up, right? There's some kind of tragedy or event and you're just completely out of your element and your habits go away for a while. So I think, but the more you build on them, the more quickly you can restart and get to that spot.
Yeah. It says when you binge eat or light up or browse social media, what you really want is not a potato chip or cigarette or a bunch of likes. What you really want is to feel better.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, not feel better, feel different. Right? I think that's the body wanting that. Sorry, I cut you off. What were you saying?
Oh, no, I was just seeing my son he's been a lifelong athlete. Now he's 29. And, you know, when we stay with them in the morning, he gets up, he makes his 3 eggs, blueberries, gets his protein shake, gets his gym bag, and he go, you know, he's had to modify because, you know, after playing soccer for 25 years, literally, because he started when he was 5. I mean, his hamstrings are bothering him and stuff like that. But anyway, I think those habits are just still there. He's just reworked them to his adult life.
As an example that I can think of, you mentioned earlier about, from say a non-selfish perspective, you know, other people, you mentioned what you're hit. There's some guys I meet with on Friday morning for Bible study, and 2 of them are older than me, and one of them is kind of caring for his wife right now, and I've known this guy for years. And so, during our time table, we're sharing some requests. He talks about the season in a very positive way. And it has impacted me. First of all, I'm grateful that my wife is healthy. But what has really helped me with is that not a lot to complain about. Let's say my wife does something that I know this would never happen to you guys, but if she did something that I didn't like, I'm less likely to be complaining about it. Because my perspective is, you know, be grateful that I'm not taking care of her with a declining health scenario. So there is some perspective that comes with that. And I'm just saying that, so knowing about someone else's issues they have to deal with, struggles, that somehow I have to get some decent perspective that helps me in my own particular lifestyle. It's like, you know, a little more grateful for my wife's health and stuff like that. It's been helpful. Yeah. So I deal with that every week when I'm with him, and just another reminder. It's like, it's a good habit that we're being reminded about. Hey, you're pretty grateful, buddy. Be grateful for that, grateful for that. Yeah.
I did like end of the chapter where they did talk about like, again, you kind of keep going back to this a little bit, was like, how do you tie some of these together? And like his was like the pregame jitters, or like the one was take 3 deep breaths, smile, and then give yourself a reward. And now the take three breaths, smile, and whatever happens next, you almost, you know, the theory is you can hack the system a little bit, that what happens next, even if it's bad, is associated with what you had been doing that was good, petting the dog or getting some type of positive. That was the middle of 133, that you might be able to, you know, kind of disrupt the, like, I get anxious before presentations. I get like a fear of loss, right? As opposed to like, I get the have to, as opposed to the get to feelings. And that's one I'm like, I'm gonna try that, right? Because I've tried a couple hacks and some of them just haven't worked. And I don't know, does anyone do anything like this? Have like a pre-game ritual they use going into presentations?
I do have a question for you though. So when you start your Tuesday morning cup of joes, do you say what's going on under silence? How do you typically handle that? What goes through your mind?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Anyone? No.
Because you deal with it every week, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so it's and I'm part of that is I prepare, so I have stuff like that joke doesn't work, I got others. That one I think is because I've done it so many times that I don't know, doesn't necessarily bother me as much.
But you got a coping mechanism, like.
But I have a whole schedule of things that I've got, like if nothing happens on that, that's all right. Hopefully I've got 10 other things I can use to get people engaged. Yeah. Where I sometimes when you're doing, and again, like for you guys real estate, doing individual presentations each time, it's a totally different scenario, it's a different product, it's a different person. That just trips me out way more because it's a lot less predictable. Yeah. And your prep is, you know, so a lot of that stuff comes in, that stuff creeps in, and that's where I have a lot of self-doubt. And that's where I'm always looking for kind of some type of like recentering. Anyone else? Am I like the only one?
I'm trying to go from have to get to down to gratitude.
Uh-huh.
Everything complaint, but every year I just think that's the first one.
Yep.
Pretty proud of that. I get the problem because here. Back to back.
I mean, I've had some very needy clients right now, and I was thinking, you know what? They're the nicest rude people I've ever met. Like at least I like them, even though they're really difficult. That is better than some of my former clients, which were difficult, and I really didn't like them.
It's like the lowest priced home over $1 million, right? I remember one agent told me that one time. I was like, that's interesting.
I'm
Anyways,
still trying, can you explain that? The lowest price home ever.
she was in a marketplace. She was overpriced. But there was a couple others that were like way overpriced, over $1 million, and she was like at 1,050,000. And like, so she was like, yeah, I'm like the lowest priced home over $1 million, even though like there's this whole marketplace at 9 and 8.
I love that.
So
It's good.
that's how she was justifying that. Okay, anything else on the last chapter before we wrap up this session? That was two. We hit end of 1, end of law 1, and finished law 2. And then end of law 2, you've got basically they start revealing, right? This is the Wheel of Fortune. They're giving us the clues. We're building this thing up. Right? Law 1, make it obvious. Law 2, make it attractive. And then we're going to get into law 3, which is make it easy. Oh, anything else? All right, that was fun. Thank y'all. And yeah, try this. Like seriously, like if y'all need a new one, I'll send these out.
You can download them from the website.
Yeah, just be a little more aware of what your, like, especially like in your morning routine, what your morning routine looks like. Cool. Thank y'all.
Thank you. I know next week I'm gonna have to go virtual